Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Alwadi binti Azman. My matric number is 2021-125879 and I'm from class KBA 2492B. Today I will present about the consumer behavior is getting affected during the Movement Control Order MCO. First, I will explain on what is consumer behavior. Okay, as we all know, consumer behavior is an analysis of how individual consumers, groups or companies choose, purchase, employ and provide ideas, commodities and services to meet their needs and wants. The consumer behavior research assumes that consumers are the market players. The role of theory perspective implies that consumers play different roles on the market. Consumer perform this role in the choice process, beginning with the source of information, the user, the payer, and also the disposer. The roles also vary in different consumption situations. For example, a mother plays the role of an influencer in the child's purchase process, whereas she plays the roles of disposer for the product consumed by the family. Okay, now on this slide, I will explain on what is the economic factor that could affect the consumer behavior. First is supply and demand of the goods or services by the consumer. For example, if the supply for a certain good is increased, thus the demand for the product will also increase since the price of that product would be at the lower price. The seller need to put a lower price on that product because there would be a competition with other sellers who also sell the same product. The consumer would go to the other seller if the price on that seller is much cheaper than others. If the supply is decreased, thus the consumer behavior also decreases since the demand on that product would be decreased because the price of that product could be pricey than before. Next economic factor is that interest rate. Interest rate also could give effect to the consumer behavior. This is because interest rate impact the cost of borrowing money as well as the return that savers can earn on their investment. Consumers prefer to borrow at the low rates and save more at high rate, but additional variable might alter basic behavior trends. Last factor is the inflation in the economy that cause for the currency of Ringgit Malaysia. When the inflation is increased, thus the purchasing power of the consumer is decreased. This is because the value of the currency is lower from other countries. This making it less likely that consumers have excess income to spend after covering basic expenses such as food and housing. Okay, now I will explain on the timeline of Movement Control Order. From the early of 2020 until today, there is a few steps taken by the government in order to reduce the cases of COVID-19 in Malaysia. The solution taken is that by reduce the movement of people in the crowded places. Firstly, the government announced for Movement Control Order MCO started from 18 March 2020 at the first phase and end at 31 March 2020. Then it was extended for another 2 weeks since the case is increased, which starting from 1 to 14 April 2020. The third phase was on 15 to 28 April 2020 and the last phase for MCO is in 29 April to 3 May 2020. After the MCO, the government announced for a conditional movement control order. The movement is not strict like MCO, but there is a condition that need to be compliant by the society. There are two phases of CMCO, which is first phase is on 4 to 12 May 2020 and the second phase was on 30 May to 9 June 2020. Next is Recovery Movement Control Order (RMCO), which is the stage to recover the country not only in the economy but also for society since the cases on that time is below 100 cases a day. This RMCO is taken for 3 phases, which the first phase is on 10 June to 31st August 2020. The second phase was on 1st September to 31st December 2020 and the third phase was on 1 January to 31st March 2021. However, the cases for certain states was increased From time to time, thus the government announced for MCO by states. Each state switch between MCO, CMCO, RMCO, EMCO, and semi-EMCO depending on the COVID-19 condition in each state. But the cases drastically increased until the government was announced for a total lockdown on 1st June until 14 June 2020 due to the remain high number of cases. Thus, it was extended for another 2 weeks, which is on 15 to 28 June 2021. During the total lockdown, it being more stricter compared to the MCO. Okay, now is the issues on the consumer behavior during the MCO. During the MCO, the consumer behavior has changed since the economy of Malaysia have been decreased because of the limitation that have been announced by the government. Most of people getting fired and the unemployment rate has been decreased on that period. The society have a limited saving in order to survive for a long period of pandemic. They more focused on buying the necessity things such as food or grocery compared before MCO, which they could spend the money on vacation or other. There are also research by the Nielsen confirm similar spending patterns since Malaysia consumer have reported the highest in health item and cabinet storage. Before the pandemic, most of the consumer opened their money for something such as travel, eating, health and well-being, and the nightlife and entertainment. But after the pandemic, they spend most on food, local entertainment, and home. Furthermore, the government has announced for a 6-month suspension on repayment of loan shortly afterward in order to relieve small, medium enterprise and corporate sector financial burdens. And also the government revealed the National Economic Recovery Plan RM35 billion, which is penjana. This is to help people who getting affected by the pandemic of COVID-19. The government also give Bantuan Rakyat Prihatin BPN to all people in order to relieve their burden of pandemic affected individuals, assist company in recovery, advancing the stimulating the economy. The society feel happy with the help of the government, which could decrease their burden to survive during this kind of situation. Okay, the last slide is for conclusion. In the conclusion, due to the new norm, not all people can adapt with the situation because for many years before, did not have this kind of situation that limit the movement of people. However, after about a year Malaysia faces this COVID-19, most people getting started to adapt to the new situation, especially in their daily life routine. Even at first, the society did not like the way that the government do, which is a movement control order, but this is the best way in order to reduce the cases of COVID-19 because there was a limited movement that can help in spreading the virus towards each other. In addition, due to the advanced technology nowadays, help the consumer behavior during the pandemic and movement control order. For example, our e-wallet and the various applications such as Foodpanda, Lazada and Shopee. This could give a positive vibe to the society and survive during the movement control order until the vaccine that can against the COVID-19 be found and all people have getting the vaccination. Thus, during the time of movement control order have affected the consumer behavior, especially in their lifestyle.